Looking back at our history, rich people have long been around, but one may ponder upon a few things. Who truly were the richest among them? How did they come up with such wealth? And what would its real value be in modern standards? The answers to these questions and more are coming up in this video, so stay tuned till the end. Welcome to the Future Billionaires Club, where you can get the inspiration and motivation for that billion-dollar lifestyle you desire. And join the club by clicking that subscribe button below and watch more of our precious videos. Without further ado, here are the top 10 richest people in history. Number 10. Augustus Caesar. Ian Morris, a history professor in Stanford University, said that Augustus had personal riches equivalent to 1/5 of his empire's economy. In today's standards, that money would amount to about $4.6 trillion. During his time as the Emperor of Rome, he was responsible for an empire which accounted for 25 to 30% of the world's economic output. Morris further added that the emperor personally owned all of Egypt at one point. It's amazing. Number 9. Emperor Shenzong. Shenzong was the emperor of the Song dynasty from 960 to 1279, and he held most of the economic power in the nation. It was heralded as one of the most economically powerful empires of all time. A Chinese economic historian at Tamkang University by the name of Ronald A. Edwards looked into the Song dynasty and found that the nation was responsible for 25 to 30% of the world's economic output during its peak. All of this wealth was said to be both from its technological innovations and extreme skill at tax collection, which is said to have been so advanced that European governments were lagging far behind. Number 8. Akbar I. Akbar I was the greatest emperor of India's Mughal dynasty. He was said to have controlled an empire that accounted for about 1/4 of the global economic output. Evidence from economic historian Angus Maddison led us to the speculation that, and I quote, "The Mughal dynasty had a ruling class whose extravagant lifestyle surpassed that of the European society." This claim was supported by the work of economist Branko Milanovic, whose work also pointed out that this empire was the best at drawing out funds from its people. Number 7. Joseph Stalin. The Red Tsar himself was surprisingly an extraordinary figure in modern economic history. Although it's quite difficult to distinguish Stalin's fortune from that of the Soviet Union, his unusual mix of economic strength and total dominance over the USSR has prompted numerous analysts to name him one of the wealthiest men of all time. Information from the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD, found that in 1950, the Soviet Union produced an estimated 9.5% of the global economic output. That would be around $7.5 trillion based on modern economic standards. However, the money wasn't his per se. It was more of the country's money. So would Stalin still be rich in the traditional sense? Maybe, if we stretch the definition a bit. Even so, it would be wrong not to put him on the list. We might not have a solid idea how much he had, but his economic influence was second to none in recent history. Number 6. John D. Rockefeller. Rockefeller had a start investing in the oil business in 1863. By the year 1880, his Standard Oil Company owned 90% of the American oil supply. According to his New York Times obituary, Rockefeller was estimated to be around $1.5 billion. This was based on a 1918 federal income tax report and calculations of his overall fortune. Figures gathered by Measuring Worth would put that about 2% of the US economic production that year. So in modern economic standards, he'd be worth around $341 billion. Number 5. Andrew Carnegie. You might hear about Rockefeller more than Andrew Carnegie, but this man may very well be the wealthiest American of all time. He had humble beginnings. He was a Scottish immigrant who started work as a telegrapher and continued to garner wealth as a bond salesman and from investing in railroads. Eventually, he built Pittsburgh's Carnegie Steel Company, which he later sold to J.P. Morgan in 1901 for a whopping $480 million. That sum was a little over 2.1% of the US GDP at the time, granting Carnegie economic strength equal to $372 billion in 2019. Number 4. Alan Rufus. Known to some as Alan the Red, Alan Rufus was the nephew of William the Conqueror, the former having participated in the Norman invasion in 1066. According to Philip Beresford and Bill Rubenstein, both the authors of the book The Richest of the Rich, Rufus had left behind £11,000 sterling. It doesn't sound like much now, but back then, it would have amounted to 7% of England's GDP, the value of which had been estimated to be around $194 billion in 2018. Number 3. Jeffrey Bezos. Bringing it back to contemporary times, Bezos' fortune reached $100 billion for the first time on November 24, 2017. Forbes officially dubbed him the richest man in the world on March 6, 2018, with a net worth of $112 billion. As the first centi-billionaire in the Forbes asset ranking, he received another title, the richest man in modern history, after having raised his net worth to $150 billion in July of 2018. Number 2. Genghis Khan. The man is without a doubt one of the most influential military figures of all time. As a dictator of an empire spanning China to Europe in its heyday, he governed the greatest continental empire in history. Nevertheless, in spite of his immense influence, historians suggest that Genghis Khan never hoarded his money. As a matter of fact, it was said that his generosity was the secret to his power. Reports show that he would actually share his spoils with the soldiers and commanders. An excerpt from the book Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World reads, "He built no palace for himself or family, no temple, no tomb, and not even a house." The author Jack Weatherford continues, "He was born in a vulgaire and died in a vulgaire." His book further depicts Khan in death, being buried like a commoner, wrapped in felt, then buried. And finally, number 1, Mansa Musa. The King of Timbuktu. Mansa Musa is also referred to as the wealthiest man in history. He could have very well been the influence to one of our beloved Marvel superheroes, the Black Panther. Ferrum College historian Professor Richard Smith claims that the West African kingdom of Musa was possibly the greatest producer of gold in the world, and at a period when gold was in especially high demand. How rich was Musa, you ask? There's just no way to place an exact figure on how much he had. Records were either unfortunately not there or insufficient, with some reports estimating his riches to be at values unfeasible for the time. Rudolph Ware, an associate professor of history in the University of Michigan, explains, Musa's wealth was so immense that most people would have a hard time describing it. I'm pretty sure that line sums it all up. A lot of impressive people on this list. Which one impressed you the most? Let us know by leaving a comment below. And because you're still here, we got some bonus info for you guys. Did you know that Mansa Musa is a man of many names? His full name was Kankan Musa Keita, but he went by numerous titles such as the Lion of Mali, the Emir of Mali, the Lord of the Wangara Mines, and when he took over the Kingdom of Ghana, he was called the Conqueror of Ghana. Thanks for watching, Future Billionaire. Enjoyed what you saw? Deposit a like, and be sure to join the Future Billionaires Club by hitting subscribe and ringing the notification bell to keep up to date with our entertaining uploads. And check out these other amazing videos we've selected for you next.